Chapter 31. Beyond the broken glass, the sky lightened. The persistent rain that had been falling since dawn drizzled to a halt. Nathaniel sneezed. London was waking up. For the first time, traffic appeared on the road below. Grimy red buses with snarling engines, carrying the first commuters towards the center of the city. A few sporadic cars, honking their horns at anyone scurrying across their path. Bicycles, too, with riders hunched and laboring inside their heavy greatcoats. Slowly, the shops opposite began to open. The owners emerged and, with harsh rattling, raised the metal night grills from their windows. Displays were adjusted. The butcher slapped down pink slabs of meat on his enamel shelving. The tobacconist hung a rack of magazines above his counter. Next door, the bakery's ovens had been hot for hours. Warm air that smelled of loaves and sugared donuts drifted across the street and reached Nathaniel, shivering and hungry, in the empty room. A street market was starting up in a side road close by. Shouts rang out, some cheery, others hoarse and guttural. Boys tramped past, rolling metal casks or wheeling barrows piled high with vegetables. A police car cruised north along the road, slowing as it passed the market, then revving ostentatiously and speeding away. The sun hung low over the rooftops, a pale egg-yellow disk clouded by haze. On any other morning, Mrs. Underwood would have been busy cooking breakfast. He could see her there, in front of him, small, busy, resolutely cheerful, bustling round the kitchen, clanging pans down on the cooker, chopping tomatoes, slinging toast into the toaster, waiting for him to come down. On any other morning, that would have been so. But now, the kitchen was gone. The house was gone. And Mrs. Underwood. Mrs. Underwood was... He wanted to weep. His face was heavy with the desire for it. It was as if a flood tide of emotion lay dammed there, ready to pour forth. But his eyes remained dry. There was no release. He stared out over the gathering activity of the street below, seeing none of it, numb to the chill that bit into his bones. Whenever he closed his eyes, a flickering white shadow danced against the dark. The memory of flames. Mrs. Underwood was... Nathaniel took a deep, shuddering breath. He buried his hands in his trouser pockets and felt the touch of the bronze disc there, smooth against his fingers. It made him start and pull his hand away. His whole body shook with cold. His brain seemed frozen too. His master. He had tried his best for him. But she... He should have warned her. Got her out of the house before it happened. Instead of which he had to think. This was no time to... He had to think what to do. Or he was lost. Or he was lost. For half the night, he had run like a madman through the gardens and back roads of North London, eyes vacant, mouth agape. He remembered it only as a series of rushes in the dark, of scrambles over walls and dashes under street lamps, of whispered commands that he had automatically obeyed. He had a sensation of pressing up against cold brick walls, then squeezing through hedges, cut and bruised and soaked to the skin. Once, before the all-clear was given, he had hidden for what seemed like hours at the base of a compost heap, his face pressed against the moldering slime. It seemed no more real than a dream. Throughout this flight, he had been replaying Underwood's face of terror, seeing a jackal head rising from the flames. Unreal, also. Dream within a dream. He had no memory of the pursuit, though at times it had been close and pressing. The hum of a search sphere, a strange chemical scent carried on the wind. That was all he knew about it, until, shortly before dawn, they had stumbled down into an area of narrow red brick houses and back alleys and found the boarded-up building. Here, for the moment, he was safe. He had time to think, work out what to do. But Mrs. Underwood was... "Cold, isn't it?" said a voice. Nathaniel turned away from the window. A little way off across the ruined room, the boy that was not a boy was watching him with shiny eyes. It had given itself the semblance of thick winter gear, a spongy jacket top, new blue jeans, strong brown boots, a woolly hat. It looked very warm. "You're shivering," said the boy. "But then, you're hardly dressed for a winter's expedition. What have you got under that jersey?" "Just a shirt, I expect. And look at those flimsy shoes. They must be soaked right through." Nathaniel hardly heard him. His mind was far away. "This isn't the place to be half naked," the boy went on. "Look at it. Cracks in the walls, a hole in the ceiling. We're open to the elements here. Brrr, chilly." They were on the upper floor of what had evidently been a public building. The room was cavernous, bare and empty, with whitewashed walls stained yellow and green with mold. All along each wall stretched row upon row of empty shelves, covered in dust, dirt, and bird droppings. Disconsolate piles of wood that might once have been tables or chairs were tucked into a couple of corners. Tall windows looked out over the street, and wide marbled steps led downstairs. The place smelt of damp and decay. "Do you want me to help you with the cold?" the boy said, looking sideways at him. "You only have to ask." Nathaniel did not respond. His breath frosted in front of his face. The genie came a bit closer. "I could make a fire," it said. "A nice hot one. I've got plenty of control over that element. Look!" A tiny flame flickered into the center of its palm. "All this wood in here, going to waste. What was this place, do you think? A library? I think so. Don't suppose the commoners are allowed to read much anymore, are they? That's usually the way it goes." The flame grew a little. "You only have to ask, oh my master. I'd do it as a favor. That's what friends are for." Nathaniel's teeth were chattering in his head. More than anything else, more than even the hunger that was gnawing in his belly like a dog, he needed warmth. The little flame danced and spun. "Yes," he said huskily. "Make me a fire." The flame instantly died out. The boy's brow furrowed. Now that wasn't very polite. Nathaniel closed his eyes and heaved a sigh. "Please." "Much better." A small spark leaped and ignited a pile of wood nearby. Nathaniel shuffled over and huddled beside it, his hands inches from the flames. For a few minutes, the genie remained silent, pacing here and there about the room. The feeling slowly returned to Nathaniel's fingers, though his face stayed numb. At length, he became aware that the genie had come close again, and was sitting on its haunches, idly stirring a long sliver of wood in the fire. "How does that feel?" it asked. "Melting nicely, I hope." It waited politely for an answer, but Nathaniel said nothing. "I'll tell you one thing," the genie went on in a conversational tone. "You're an interesting specimen. I've known a fair few magicians in my time, and there aren't many who are quite as suicidal as you. Most would think that, popping in to tell a powerful enemy you'd pinched his treasure, wasn't a terribly bright idea, especially when you're utterly defenseless. But you, all in a day's work. I had to, Nathaniel said shortly. He did not want to talk. No doubt you had a brilliant plan, which I, and Lovelace for that matter, completely missed. Mind telling me what it was? Be silent. The genie wrinkled its nose. That was your plan? It's a simple one, I'll say that much. Still, don't forget it was my life you were risking back there, acting out your strange convulsion of conscience. It reached into the fire suddenly and removed a burning ember which it held musingly between finger and thumb. I had another master like you once. He had the same mulish obstinacy, seldom acted in his own best interests. Didn't live long. It sighed, tossed the ember back into the flames. Never mind. All's well that ends well. Nathaniel looked at the genie for the first time. All's well? You're alive? Does that count as good? For an instant, Nathaniel saw Mrs. Underwood's face watching him from the fire. He rubbed his eyes. I hate to say this, the genie said, but Lovelace was right. You were totally out of your depth last night. Magicians don't act the way you do. It was a good job I was there to rescue you, so where are you going now? Prague? What? Well, Lovelace knows you've escaped. He'll be looking out for you, and you've seen what he'll do to keep you quiet. Your only hope is to vanish from the scene and leave London for good. Abroad will be safest. Prague? Why should I go to Prague? Magicians there might help you. Nice beer, too, I'm told. Nathaniel's lip curled. I'm no traitor. The boy shrugged. If that's not on, then you're left with getting a quiet new life here. There are plenty of possibilities. Let's see. Looking at you, I'd say heavy lifting's out. You're too spindly. That rules out being a laborer. Nathaniel frowned with indignation. I have no intention of... The genie ignored him. But you could turn your runt-like size to your advantage. Yes! A sweeps lad. That's the answer. They always need fresh urchins to climb the flues. Wait, I'm not! Or you could become apprenticed to a sewer rat. You get a bristle brush, a hook, and a rubber plunger, then wriggle up the tightest tunnels looking for blockages. I won't. There's a world of opportunities out there, and all of them better than being a dead magician. Shut up! The effort of raising his voice made Nathaniel feel his head was about to split in two. I don't need your suggestions! He stumbled to his feet, eyes blazing with anger. The genie's jibes had cut through his weariness and grief to ignite a pent-up fury that suddenly consumed him. It rose up from his guilt, his shock, and his mortal anguish, and used them for its fuel. Lovelace had said that there was no such thing as honor, that every magician acted only for himself. Very well. Nathaniel would take him at his word. He would not make such a mistake again. But Lovelace had made an error of his own. He had underestimated his enemy. He had called Nathaniel weak, then tried to kill him. And Nathaniel had survived. You want me to slink away? He cried. I cannot! Lovelace has murdered the only person who ever cared for me! He halted. There was a catch in his voice, but still, his eyes were dry. Underwood? You must be joking. He loathed you. He was a man of sense. His wife, I mean. I want justice for her. Vengeance for what he has done. The effect of these ringing words was slightly spoiled by the genie blowing a loud raspberry. It rose, shaking its head sadly, as if weighed down by great wisdom.
It isn't justice you're after, boy. It's oblivion. Everything you had went up in flames last night, so now you've got nothing to lose. I can read your thoughts as if they were my own. You want to go out in a blaze of glory against Lovelace. No, I want justice.
The genie laughed.
It'll be so easy, following your master and his wife into the darkness. So much easier than starting life afresh. Your pride is ruling your head, leading you to your death. Didn't last night teach you anything? You're no match for him, Nat. Give it up. Never. It's not even as if you're really a magician anymore.
It gestured at the crumbling walls.
Look around you. Where are we? This isn't some cushy townhouse filled with books and papers. Where are the candles? Where's all the incense? Where's the comfort? Like it or not, Nathaniel, you've lost everything a magician needs. Wealth, security, self-respect, a master. Let's face it, you've got nothing. I have my scrying glass,
Nathaniel said,
and I have you.
Hurriedly, he set himself back beside the fire. The cold of the room still pierced through him.
Yes, I was coming to that.
The genie began clearing a space among the debris of the floor with the side of its boot.
When you've calmed down a bit, I shall bring you some chalk. Then you can draw me a circle here and set me free.
Nathaniel stared at him.
I've completed my charge,
The boy continued.
and more, much more. I spied on Lovelace for you. I found out about the amulet. I saved your life.
Nathaniel's head felt oddly light and muzzy, as if it were stuffed with cloth.
Please, don't rush to thank me,
The boy went on.
I'll only get embarrassed. All I want is to see you drawing that pentacle. That's all I need. No,
Nathaniel said.
not yet. Sorry,
The boy replied.
my hearing must be going on account of that dramatic rescue I pulled off last night. I thought you just said no. I did. I'm not setting you free. Not yet.
A heavy silence fell. As Nathaniel watched, his little fire began to dwindle, as it were being sucked down through the floor. It vanished altogether. With little cracking noises, ice began to crust onto the scraps of wood that a moment before had been burning nicely. Cold blistered his skin, his breath became harsh and painful. He staggered upright.
Stop that!
He gasped.
Bring back the fire!
The genie's eyes glittered.
It's for your own good,
It said.
I've just realized how inconsiderate I was being. You don't want to see another fire, not after the one you caused last night. Your conscience would hurt you too much.
Flickering images rose before Nathaniel's eyes, flames erupting from the ruined kitchen.
I didn't start the fire,
He whispered.
It wasn't my fault. No. You hid the amulet. You framed Underwood. No, I didn't intend Lovelace to come. It was for security.
The boy sneered.
Sure it was. Your security. If Underwood had been any good, he'd have survived. He'd have fought Lovelace off, raised the alarm. You don't believe that. Let's face it. You killed them both.
Nathaniel's face twisted in fury.
I was going to expose Lovelace. I was going to trap him with the amulet, show the authorities. Who cares? You were too late. You failed. Thanks to you, demon. If you hadn't led them to the house, none of this would have happened. Nathaniel seized on the idea like a drowning man. It's all your fault. and I'm going to pay you back. Think you're ever going to be freed? Think again. You're staying permanently. It's perpetual confinement for you. Is that so? In that case,
The counterfeit boy stepped forward and was suddenly very close.
I might as well kill you myself right now. What have I got to lose? I'll be in the tin either way, but I'll have the satisfaction of breaking your neck first.
Its hand descended gently on Nathaniel's shoulder. Nathaniel's skin crawled. He resisted the overpowering temptation to shy away and run, and instead stared back into the dark, blank eyes. For a long moment, neither said anything. At last, Nathaniel licked his dry lips.
That won't be necessary,
he said thickly.
I'll free you before the month is up.
The genie pulled him closer.
Free me now.
No, Nathaniel swallowed.
We have work to do first.
Work? It frowned. Its hand stroked his shoulder.
What work? What is there to do?
Nathaniel forced himself to remain quite still.
My master and his wife are dead. I must avenge them. Lovelace must pay for what he did.
The whispering mouth was very near now, but Nathaniel could feel no breath against his face.
But I've told you, Lovelace is too powerful. You haven't a hope of besting him. Forget the matter as I do. Release me and forget your troubles. I cannot. Why so? I owe it to my master. He was a good man. No, he wasn't. That's not the reason at all.
The genie whispered directly into his ear.
It isn't justice or honor that drives you now, boy, but guilt. You can't take the consequences of your actions. You seek to drown out what you've done to your master and his wife. Well, if that's the way you humans choose to suffer, so be it. But leave me out of the equation.
Nathaniel spoke with a firmness he did not feel.
Until your month is up, you'll obey me if you ever want your freedom. Going after Lovelace practically amounts to suicide in any case, yours and mine.
The boy smiled nastily.
That being so, I still don't see why I shouldn't kill you now.
There will be ways to expose him! Nathaniel could not help himself. He was speaking far too fast.
We just need to think it through carefully. I'll make a bargain with you. Help me avenge myself on Lovelace, and I'll set you free immediately afterwards. Then there can be no doubt about our positions. It's in both our interests to succeed.
The genie's eyes glittered.
As always, a laudably fair arrangement dictated from a one-sided position of power. Very well. I have no choice. But if at any time you place either of us at undue risk, be warned. I shall get my revenge in first. Agreed.
The boy stepped back and released Nathaniel's shoulder. Nathaniel retreated, eyes wide, breathing hard. Humming gently, the genie wandered to the windows, reigniting the fire casually as it passed. Nathaniel struggled to calm himself, to regain control. Another wave of misery washed through him, but he did not succumb. No time for that. He must appear strong in front of his slave.
Well then, master,
the genie said.
Enlighten me. Tell me what we do.
Nathaniel kept his voice as level as he could.
First, I need food, and perhaps new clothes. Then, we must pool our information on Lovelace and the amulet. We also need to know what the authorities think about what happened last night. That last one's easy.
Bartimaeus said, pointing out the window.
Look out there.